from the Salvation Army National Headquarters, this is the Fight for Good podcast.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Fight for Good podcast. I'm your host, Lieutenant Colonel Tim Foley. We're broadcasting from our offices here in Alexandria, Virginia, national headquarters of the Salvation Army in the United States of America. Here with me once again today is our War Cry editorial director, Mr. Jeff McDonald.
Greetings, Colonel. We keep on keeping on.
We do, and you, sir, are looking very patriotic today. I salute you and say God
best.
Bless America. For our listening audience, we now are able to broadcast and record this in video format. We've made the executive decision that we're not going to share the videos yet. Maybe down the road we'll do that, but it's nice. We're recording remotely, but we all can see each other. So, and Mr. McDonald has a beautiful American flag flying behind him. He looks just very patriotic, very Washington, D.C. Also with us today is our executive producer, our cutter, our editor, our smiling, happy, smart person, Elizabeth. Good to see you, young lady.
Hello there.
And things are well with you?
Super well.
Well, what's that, Jeff? Super well.
Super well.
Super well.
I like that.
Thanks.
We will, if she ever comes on and says she's having a bad, no good, rotten, nothing to bad day, whatever, we're never going to cut that out because that would be historic for us. Well, in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing the March 2021 issue of the War Cry. This month celebrates for all of us the the first year of completing our COVID separations. I think all of us are tired of the word COVID. Most of us never want to see a Zoom meeting again. Certainly, we're getting tired of masks and hearing the arguments back and forth. I am very weary of not having my incredible team around me in person here at National Headquarters. But we're continuing on. And Jeff, thank you very much for all that you have been doing this last year in helping our team get these magazines to print and in the mail and on people's nightstands, their tables, prison cells, wherever the War Cry has gone. And so I salute you once again.
Well, I salute you in turn because not only have we maintained our production, but you managed to innovate our content by introducing new writers and contributors and keeping us fresh, which I think is great. You know, no COVID or no COVID, you keep looking forward. So that's very helpful. And I know I've said this before, but we're part of such a vast network, from contributors to internal staff to writers to production people to the mailroom to those who distribute the War Cry. It's just great to be part of that chain.
It's been an interesting journey for us. It's been a journey that, yes, we've grown weary, but it is what it is, and we've continued to make the best of it. And I'm just thrilled because we have completed another issue, and we actually this month we complete 2 issues because we have to do that every few months. We do the March issue, and then we do the Easter War Cry. And sometimes I guess, Jeff, it's the other way around. If Easter appears early in the lunar calendar, so it moves up into March, but this year it's in April. Right. And we also have to do the same in the fall with the November issue and the Christmas War Cry.
Yes, indeed. We work on those simultaneously, which keeps our muscles, in good shape. But we also put the large print edition of the Easter issue out as well.
Yeah, and also in Christmas we do the Spanish and large print. But hats off to you and your staff and all of us together. And Elizabeth, you continue to just kind of slice and dice and make these podcasts kind of fun. And you not only with this podcast, the Fight for Good podcast, but you're working on our sister podcast, the Battle Lines with the young Captain Satterley, talking about youth and culture and all that you do on social media to make it like pop and bing and wow.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well,
Planning
Jeff,
ahead too. Mhm,
what's
sorry.
that? Go ahead.
And, Elizabeth's planning ahead and scheduling things and, turning things around very quickly. So, and our
Yeah,
podcasts are growing. Our interviews are growing.
our
We have
interviews
more.
are growing. Our interview space going. The audience is growing more. We're excited about that. And Elizabeth is just constantly like, I want to schedule you for this podcast. I want you now. You need to listen to this one. And it's like, oh, just give me a break, Elizabeth. Come on, get off my back. I got things to do. But she is just brilliant, and we thank you, Elizabeth, for all that you're doing.
Kurt, I have a quick question for you. Do you get the impression in our work, I think, I'm sure you do, that, we're handling such interesting and personal, sometimes emotional material and trying to handle that with care so that we present it in the best way possible. So it's really quite a trust that we are fulfilling.
Well, we've talked about this before. I think the vulnerability that any of us that put, words down on paper or, on the computer screen, there's exposure. We're living, not kind of, we are living in a time right now where opinion can sever relationships instantly, right? We're finding differences of opinion in family relationships, the in personal friendships, and cancel culture has kind of succumbed to this. Nobody can have a differing opinion without being shunned, and I think there can be a little bit of a hesitancy when you're kind of exposing yourself. I think there's a little bit of risk with that. But I think, for me, the thing that I find is two things. One is we are talking about the God that is faithful. Uh, the COVID-19 has not been the first pandemic that has ever swept the earth. There have been pandemics before that have killed millions and millions of people over the course of historic time, right? So that, you think about the people that survived all of those kind of things, from chickenpox and typhoid and polio and the Black Plagues and on and on, right? So you have like a context there, but God is still faithful in that midst. So that gives us one element, and then the other element is that because of the message of God's word, that gives us the ability to go forward with courage and speak truth. And we know that sometimes truth in this day and age is questioned by people, or there are no absolutes in some people's minds. But for us as Christians, we believe that truth can be found in Jesus Christ, who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. Now, I tell people, you got to take that up with God. He said it. I didn't say it. That's fine. And you can do with it whatever you want. So we're dispensing the message of the faithfulness of God and the truth of the gospel, and that gives us courage. And you and I have talked about this before. We're standing on the shoulders of great pioneers, anointed people that God has used over the years to put this magazine together week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, for over 140 years. So I'm buoyed, held up by that cloud of witnesses and that confidence that we have, that knowing that what we're sharing is truly making a difference in people's lives.
I have to share with you, and I'm sorry I'm going to be wordy, but we got a submission from a Ukrainian journalist who was wondering why, there were so many religions and people practicing, and, how people in different religions are very devout. So she said she thought she'd analyze all these religions. Well, she came to the conclusion, she turned to atheism because she's saying things like, well, why would a God have to sacrifice himself if he created the world in the first place? And why does Scripture endorse slavery? And why do women have to be subservient to men? And these are misconceptions, I think, that are, that plague people, that make people question faith. So our role is to present it in its fullness and its accuracy.
Well, and there are misconceptions and things that are misunderstood and things that are not clarified and things that get twisted and turned. And sometimes people want to believe what they want to believe. They don't like certain things about the faith. Uh, the thing that I've come to become, I don't want to say comfortable, because that can lead to apathy or whatever. But I guess the thing that I find peace in is that, first off, God hasn't called me to judge the world. I don't know people's souls. I don't know the state of where somebody's thought process is. But the only thing God's called me to do is just to love people. And you have to kind of take it or leave it. You kind of have to take either like I love the great C.S. Lewis, where he said basically, either Jesus is who he said he was, or he was like the craziest, nuttiest person ever to have, I forget the exact quote, but basically Jesus was like a lunatic or something. I always recommend to people that are skeptical to go and read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, which were his Sunday evening talks to the Royal Air Force in London during World War II, I believe, because C.S. Lewis himself was an atheist, and he became a great believer and an apologist for the Christian faith because of being open-minded and allowing God to speak to him through his word and through the historical record, on and on. Jeff, people can put up arguments all they want, but in the end, we die and we face our maker. And I'm just mindful I'm trying to make the most of my life and the opportunities that God has given me, and to walk through the doors and walk across the bridges into culture, into society. And that's what we're doing with our magazine. It's a portal of entry through the different topics. Do we cover all the topics to a full extent? No, we don't. Do we satisfy everybody every time? No, absolutely not. I mean, I have a few letters that remind us that we're not always satisfying everybody. Do we do everything correctly? No, we don't. We don't do everything correctly. We're human. We're fallible. We do make mistakes. But I think we're giving it our best shot, and we're doing it with a lot of love and grace and creativity. And as you know, the people that we get to work with and get to lead and work alongside of to make this magazine happen are people who believe in the mission of the Salvation Army and who are in themselves artists and artisans, and anybody that is associated with this magazine should be proud of it. And we're going to continue to carry on that tradition.
Could we, Elizabeth, can we try to get Colonel to blush? I mean, we have to admit, this guy is really quite remarkable. Wouldn't you say?
I would say
Thoughtful.
extra remarkable.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Thoughtful, open-minded, insightful. I hate to overdo it, Colonel, but just know.
What do you guys want? What is it you want? I know. I think our listeners, I think these folks are wanting something from me. So I'll let you know. They're not going to pick my pocket because I got my wallet right here in my front pocket. And no, I thank you for that.
It's true.
It's a joy. It really is a joy. And I mean, my 39 years, almost 39 years of doing not the war cry, but being a Salvation Army officer has just afforded me a whole array of opportunities that I could never have in another job. And to work with the people that I'm working with right now is just, it's beyond belief. And I thank you, sir. As both of you are some of the kindest and wisest and greatest people I've ever been associated with. So now we're having this big love feast here. We're
Yeah,
talking
what's
and
wrong?
praising each other.
There has to be something wrong.
There's something wrong. But we're going to quickly look into this issue of the March 2021 issue. We have this great cover of a Salvationist from Korea who is actually in Canada. David Kang works as a tailor in Toronto, and last year, our previous editor of Peer Magazine, Captain Pam Maynard, was going to Canada to get a custom-made uniform. Jeff, I've never had a custom-made Salvation
No?
Army uniform.
Oh,
I think if I got a custom-made Salvation Army uniform, I'd want like a top coat and tails, and maybe some
yeah.
white gloves and a top hat, and
Yeah.
something really fancy, like silk red silk, liners on the inside, that kind of thing.
Spats to go with it.
Spats, yeah, on the shoes, a walking cane. But this is a humble man that Captain just loved, and so she asked if she could do a story. And Jeff, she wrote this story last year, and we just didn't have the right place for it. So we're excited to feature Mr. Kang on the front, and it's just such a vibrant, happy picture. I love this, and I love the article.
It's a remarkable story. I mean, here's this guy who was an orphan in Korea as a child. Was in an orphanage for a while where it was severe. Made his way through, finally finding the army there, coming to the U.S. and finding a craft in tailoring, and now just puts his heart and soul into designing and creating uniforms for Salvation Army people and praying for them while he does so. It really is a remarkable story.
It's a great story. We encourage you to look at it and then maybe just think about it in your own life in the context of what it is that you do in your profession. I believe there's more effectiveness in the marketplace, especially for salvationists, soldiers, those that have their own businesses and those that are working in corporate environments or whatever. I mean, that's a great battleground where you can bring the light in. And this is a great story. A great cover. As you know, Jeff, we wrestle sometimes what to put on the cover of the magazine, and we don't argue about it, but sometimes we wrestle with it. This one was instant. We got the cover.
Yeah,
so
and we have 6 seconds to grab somebody's attention with the cover, so it's important.
Yeah, so it was good. And then flipping past some of our regular stuff that we have, you'll notice just kind of a little nuance. We want to highlight that our own Commissioner Jolene Hodder is now sharing writing duties with the national commander, her husband, Commissioner Ken. So they kind of rotate every month, and they asked us if we would consider doing that, and we said, of course. Well, of course we would. They're our bosses, so we're going to say that. But there's a little bit of a method to the madness here, Jeff, and I think part of it is making sure that we start reflecting in our magazine the need for equality for our married women officers in particular who have not been given that kind of limelight or that opportunity. And I know Commissioner Jolene has shared with me, the general of the Salvation Army is asking more and more of her and making sure there's kind of a balance in what it is that she's doing. So we welcome Commissioner Jolene to adding content to our magazine every other month, rotating with her husband.
It kind of leads us to the podcast that we are emphasizing this issue with one Lieutenant Colonel Cindy Foley. Speaking of women in leadership.
Yeah, I flipped the page on page 6, and I showed her the other day. I said, "Look, we're together again. we've never been. It's kind of fun. I wrote my little editor piece, and you guys put her picture there up on the other side, and we've recorded a podcast with her. And Jeff, you and her were so verbose in your comments, and I think I was sitting over in the corner going, oh wow, you guys are really smart people. What am I doing here? But I think, Elizabeth, we're turning that into a two-parter. I think.
Why not?
Know.
Let's do it.
It's certainly worth it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Colonel City has, I talk forever and a day how brilliant she is. Anyways, that's a little biased, but we'll let people later on determine that. And we kind of keep flipping. And Jeff, there was a letter that showed up in our mailbox one day, and it came from this gentleman, Jerry, his last
Francis,
name is Jerry Francis. And so there's a great article here about his own testimony of being associated with the Salvation Army back in the Bowery Boy days. With and you, Jeff, as a New Jersey boy, you would probably kind of resonate with what he has to say, use guys and all that. But
right.
The Salvation Army, the Bowery Corps, and he talks a little bit about some of the how the effectiveness of the Salvation Army had on the police at that time, and how he came to become a Christian. Long story short, he's developed an association called Police Officers for Christ. And Jeff, I really enjoyed this heartfelt expression that Jerry wrote for us.
Yeah, I mean, he was so impressed with what the difference the Army made in that world that he was a policeman in, and was instrumental even in his conversion. And it's inspired him to create this organization, Police Officers for Christ. So that's really an interesting angle, and shows you the impact on the local level that the Army can make.
And I think this is important too, and I don't want to get too negative here, but a few months ago, we got a letter to the editor from somebody who felt like we were bashing the police because of what we called, I think it was in the July issue, we were writing on the need for racial equality and the whole George Floyd issue, which was very powerful and very meaningful. And it's something like our staff was wrestling with as well. But they took our interpretation the wrong way and felt like we were de-emphasizing or somehow dehumanizing the police, which is far from, I don't even know how this person came to that conclusion. So this is kind of what we're saying from the war cry is that we believe in our law enforcement. As in every profession, you have cronies. In my profession, in the ministry, we have cronies. You have, so Jeff, thanks for doing a good job with the layout on this and the editing and giving our police officers a little bit of positive limelight.
Yeah, and it shows the dedication among police officers, and their commitment to their making their world better.
The next page over, we got a contact from Major McKinley Dove, a retired officer from the great state of Washington in the Pacific Northwest. And Jeff, I've already used this article twice in some teaching and speaking, and I thank Major Dove because he goes back to the simplicity of just paying attention to people and being with people and visiting people.
Yeah. Yeah, especially now when Salvation Army officers are so burdened with their responsibilities, and especially during COVID, responding to that, it's helpful to know that their work matters when they come alongside folks.
Well, he kind of talks in this little testimony here. I guess it's a testimony, but it's more of a story of visiting someone that came to his core. They were having dinner. He didn't really want to go, but he did because he wanted to watch this fight that was going to be on TV. And so it ends up they had dinner and they got to talking. And the husband, who didn't go to the church, said, "Well, you can watch the fight here." And he watched the fight. And so the guy makes a comment that he gets dressed up for the next day, and the wife's going, where you, what? I'm going to go to church. I figure if the guy can sit with me and watch a boxing match for an hour, I can go and sit and listen to him for an hour in church. Yeah. And he did say, thankfully I didn't preach for an hour. So, but that the guy came around, and it just, Jeff, it just reminded me, I'm here because a Salvation Army officer many years ago visited the house I was living in with my roommate and invited us to attend the Salvation Army on a Sunday. And he followed up because my roommate at the time, his mom was an employee of the Salvation Army in San Francisco, and she was worried about her son and the wayward roommate. And so the Salvation Army officer ends up on my doorstep and gives an invite for us to come to church. And a few months later, we ended up going to the church, and I'm here today. And my friend, Major Randy Kinnaman, him and his wife, Cheryl, they're the Corps officers of the Salvation Army in Tacoma, Washington. So the power of a visit is really, really strong. And so I just love that little story. So there's some good stuff there. We have a big article on the Salvation Army's position statement on helping people with disabilities. Jeff, was there anything that kind of popped out for you on that particular issue?
The expanded definition and awareness. Now, the Army is looking to increase awareness about what disability, how you identify it, what the root causes are. Because often we think about physical disabilities, what people deal with, and how important it is to help them. But also, there's other characteristics of disability created by poverty and social tension and prejudice and discrimination. So it's a wide-ranging discussion about what disability is. But more importantly, the whole point is the need for inclusiveness, to include people in as they are, and to deal with them, work with them as they are, and be an advocate on their behalf. I think those are some of the key points. It's the Army's official statement on raising awareness about people with disabilities.
I'm proud of my home territory, the Western Territory in the United States, for what they have been doing with this. And I know that I have been given the opportunity in some of my jobs to allow some people with disabilities to be working with us and employ them. And, it's a very heartfelt thing to do. And I appreciate the work and the ministry that's occurring internationally. We have continuing some features in the magazine. We always have something with the Army at large. That's a very fluid page, but we kind of talk about what the work of the Salvation Army internationally. We're always we would like to remind our readers that we are connected in over 131 or 132 countries, I believe. But the Salvation Army does a myriad of different things. Whenever there's a disaster or something in the news, the Salvation. Jeff, we watched the Salvation Army here locally be involved in assisting the National Guard in January, and we know that the Salvation Army has been at work that were struck recently in Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas and Alabama and Mississippi, everybody that was hit by the really hard cold. And so thanks for the good work on that page. And I think, Elizabeth, you kind of follow up sometimes on our social media pages and remind our readers of some things that are happening currently.
I try. Thanks.
You do a good job. So you're supposed to say, yes, Colonel, I work very hard at trying to make sure
I'm very diligent.
I am very diligent.
Pulse on what's happening. You are. Jeff, let's go to our millennial section here for a second in the center, and our own wonderful Michelle Caceres has put together a great article. You and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, and we continue to talk about it. This year, we're both committed to making sure that we're providing our resources, our readers with resourcing and articles and other things about just taking care of yourself, the mental well-being, and so you've worked with Michelle on this article, Millennials and Mental Health. Is there anything you want to kind of add to this here?
Well, there's some, interesting research. 12% of millennials have a diagnosed anxiety order. Some estimates are as far as high as 1/4 of millennials are afflicted with some kind of mental health issue. And the pressures on the millennials are extreme. There's money concerns and fitting into society and what kind of work they should pursue, and really, it's all about identity and the danger of burnout, given our 24-hour news cycle and being plugged into technology at all times. So there's a myriad of issues that millennials deal with, and we just tried to offer some, helpful suggestions to, as you said, provide self-care and remember compassion. Remember that the decisions you make, they may seem monumental to time for millennials, but there's always choice, and they tend not to be as ultimate as they might think. So those are a couple of tips in there that millennials might benefit from, as well as some apps we recommend for helping them tap into scriptural reflection and taking time out to regenerate and their soul.
And what I like about it too is we have to remind our listeners and our readers that this information transcends generations. I mean, we're talking about the human condition. The human condition right now is for lots and lots of us, myself included. It's Jeff. I use this phrase of we're in a season of sorrow right now. Almost a week doesn't go by now of where I know of somebody who has passed away, or there's been some sudden, um, significant sort of things occurring in people's lives, or shifts in worries and other concerns. So we kind of went back and forth. I know you went back and forth in trying to make this piece a little more substantive. We didn't want it to just kind of be fluff or puff or placating, but I think Michelle's done a great job in resourcing this here, and in particular with the apps, because when I think people forget that the discipline of meditation actually belongs to the Christian faith. And so whenever we think of meditation, that actually was kind of stolen away from Christianity, but it's important for us as Christians to understand the contemplative side of our faith, and not to be afraid of the silence. And she's done a good job in identifying 3 apps that are scripturally based that will assist a reader. And we also talked about making sure that we had apps that were not like fee based, and which was a challenge in this day and age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're everything's going that way. But we also mentioned the Salvation Army's nationwide hotline, open to anyone looking for spiritual guidance, which is 1-844-458-4673.
That hotline is still active and activated. I know my associate, Lieutenant Colonel Jackie Bowers, is one of the people that answers the phone. It will ring to her phone, and there's still people that are calling out for help. So I think part of it is, in this day and age, we want to make sure that we're checking with each other, that we're making sure everybody's doing okay, and that we be careful. Like, well, Jeff, you and I attended a kind of an online seminar the other day of how to work your employees during the pandemic. We kind of joked, well, it came about 10 months too late, but I think we've been doing it okay. But part of it is just making sure that we're all okay, because this is a different work environment, and it's affecting us all in different ways. In fact, as we're sitting here, my wife just texted me and said, fill this out. So I guess I get to fill out my COVID shot thing. So it looks like
Oh.
I'm getting in line, So,
Mhm.
anyways, a lot of things to say about that.
Well, that's good, Colonel, because it's always good to know that we're okay. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, are we really okay?
Yeah, and I love talking to both of you offline. You bring me a lot of joy, and it's just kind of fun just to kind of shoot the breeze about all kinds of different things, and then we get back to it. Then we start hacking away, and then we start yelling at each other. Especially Elizabeth, she starts yelling at these old knuckleheads.
Yeah, if you get her irritated, look out.
I love to yell.
Yeah, she loves to yell.
Former cheerleader.
Former cheerleader cheering
Let's
us
go.
on. She's ready to pop us on. So, just kind of quickly going through the rest of it, we're very grateful for Major Annalise Francis, who's already been on our podcast. We appreciate what she has to say in her ongoing column on core values. Lots of good thoughts there, scripture based. How indebted we are. We're kind of about to land the plane with Lieutenant Colonel Dan Jennings. We have two more Bible study lessons after this one, but Colonel has given us a great insight to the idea of the deep shadows, the dark shadows, very deep shadows. Fear not, in verse 4 of Psalm 23. Jeff, I love the way he thinks. Just how he kind of lays things out. It's
definitely engaging and personal.
I keep telling people over and over, this is solid stuff here. This is stuff that if you're looking to do a Bible study for yourself, or you just get a whole bunch of people on a Zoom or a Teams call or whatever, you can talk through some of this stuff. And resurrecting something that as classic as Psalm 23 has been, really, really important. Remind me to talk to you, because I think we need to put these articles like in a free ebook format of some kind for our readers, and the same with Colonel Henson's Gardening with God,
right?
Those series. The content is excellent from godly people that continue to contribute to us.
That's no joke. I mean, you, Major Francis, and the other writers you've gotten involved. I mean, there's a lot of good, clear thinking and ideas there.
For me, it's not a matter of trying to placate or play favorites. I've never liked to, I have a quiver full of my favorite people and like my little posse or whatever. But I live my life by impressions and people that I meet, and trying to lean into God in making sure that we're addressing the needs that are out there. And God has just brought to my attention some lovely people who get it right now, and that are, for this particular season, they're just spot on. And another one, as we flip the page, is Major Ruth New, who is just knocking it out of the park with our Como tu Yo section. And this one, I think she has done on Bolivia.
Right. Yeah. And again, emphasizing or tying into the pride that people from Latin America feel for their countries and South America, and speak to them, within their context, which, is so important.
She's done a nice little Bible study on Gideon here, and then a nice little explanation about the culture and the country of Bolivia with another recipe. Hey, we produce 2 recipes in each issue of the War Cry. I think that's important, because you can flip the page and you can see steak parmigiana, another recipe from Kelly Minter, who is providing, her book is providing recipes for us. Also, just so our readers and listeners will know, Jeff, we've started inserting cartoons again. We've kind of been doing that subtly, but you and I kind of like the simple things sometimes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Got to have it. Goodness gracious.
My father tells me when he gets a war cry, one of the first things he does is he starts attacking that crossword puzzle.
Oh, good for him.
So we think our team in particular. I think Ashley is responsible for this section, and I know she takes great pride in the work that she does on that. And on the last 2 pages, our own internal historian, our assistant editor, Major Jason Swain, who is, by the way, we're going to have Major Swain on again in a podcast coming up. I think it's April or so. He was on with us before, and it was so well received. People are always interested in the historical side of the Salvation Army. And Jeff, I watched a movie the other day with Major Swain, a movie based in World War II. It's just fascinating watching a movie with him because he has so much insight.
Yeah.
But we appreciate Major Swain, and he writes a real brief piece here about how the territories of the Salvation Army kind of evolved and got their shapes. He uses so that the little highlights in history is always kind of a nice added bonus feature.
Yeah, and you dig in those stories, and there's always intrigue and the unexpected. The territories didn't just arrive as they are.
And we continue to sing the praises of our Captain Emmanuel Masengo, which we've had him on a podcast as well, and he is our contributing writer to our spiritual formation page. And Jeff, I love the placement of this page. I hope that continues. Right inside the cover, and the design team has done a great job illustrating his words and his emphasis on words, and we're grateful for the good captain's contributions.
Indeed, and Joshua does a good job with the layout on that. But that's a great topic: grace, understanding grace.
We flip the page over and we have the back page. Sometimes we never refer to the back page, but I want to refer to this because our own Gloria, who's been working here 26 years or so, came up with the graphic. We're celebrating in March Women's History Month, and there's a wonderful poem, or not poem, but a saying from Maya Angelou, and Gloria did a great job finding that graphic. And I just love. It's hard to describe this face and the colors, but you'll see it, and just know that even Jeff, even these little pieces of artwork come with a lot of attention to detail and a lot of love from our staffers. And Gloria would hate us talking about her to the public. She's so proud. She's one of my favorite people on earth, and I'm so grateful for all that she does behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yes, it's a vivid illustration, and it's an unusual approach, and that's what we need to bring material to readers in a fresh way. This helps do it.
So while we're still recording, I just have a brainstorm, and I throw it to both of you, but I think it would be great sometime to get our team, our key team members, all on this podcast, and we can maybe we can do that for the May issue. We can just talk about, from their perspective, what they bring into that. Wouldn't that be a kind of a fun thing to do sometime?
It would be. We could have cake and ice cream. No,
no, we're gonna have that when you come back, because when you get back to this building, there is an ice cream machine now. But that's another story. I'll let my wife tell you about that one.
We should just note the feature of emphasis in this issue, which is dealing with temptation. And you mentioned C.S. Lewis earlier, and I always thought one of his great quotes was that Satan's greatest device is to get people to think he doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that's one of our we kind of gloss over. There's about 3 or 4 feature articles in there that are a good read, and hopefully this issue of temptation, there'll be some grounding for some people to realize how God can free us in the midst of some of the great struggles that we may be having in our own life. Well, that's going to end this episode of the Fight for Good podcast. be sure to subscribe to Fight for Good wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to follow the War Cry at thewarcry.org and Peer Magazine, peermag.org, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We encourage you to leave your comments, leave your thumbs up. You can leave your thumbs down. But Elizabeth, you and I have been known to delete trolls. We do that.
Trolls are not cool.
They are
Thumbs
not
down.
cool. We will, no room for trolls, but room for pushback and room for disagreement at times. And that's okay. But please pay attention to our social media feeds. If you're not following any of them, like them, and you can have some of that stuff rise to the top and you can share it. Be an ambassador of the Fight for Good podcast and also the Battle Line podcast. Tell your friends about it. And we hope as the life begins to return to quote unquote normal here very soon, that you will continue to read the War Cry and support our ministry as we are sharing God's word in some very creative ways. Well, until next time, this has been the Fight for Good podcast. Bye for now.
Subscribe to Fight for Good wherever you listen to podcasts.